everybody, and welcome to another episode of the FreudenFreude weekly live stream, where we bring you content to help you grow and develop as a person and as a leader.
Hi, I'm Sandra Corona.
I'm Claudia. We are coaches.
Yes.
Coaches, yes.
Goal as a coach is to be a neurodiverse coach, an expatriate coach, and a executive coach.
Okay, and I work with corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, and their teams. Very good. Today's topic is about resilience, but I think, Sandra, you might want to share something beforehand?
Oh, yes. So for the past 3 days, I've been talking with a friend, neighbor of mine. And say that resilience is not precisely one of the easiest things to talk about. It's not something that you say, oh, that's resilience. I got it. It takes plenty of exercising, plenty of understanding, and plenty of emotion. And you have to be willing to go through each of these 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend is saying, and I didn't know that until tonight. And so I apologize to every single person that realizes this. But Claudia, I'm going to talk to you about it because it's the only way to talk about these kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying to practice resilience. I was trying to practice what can I tell this person as a thanatologist. For people that are wondering what thanatology is, if you, Claudia, are wondering, but you maybe know, it's the study of life and death. And as a thanatologist, I felt that I had a responsibility to listen to this person all the way. Her cries, her conflicts, her thoughts, everything. And I didn't know what to say. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know what to say, but I did know what to do for myself. And that was to keep calm and listen.
Yeah.
And part of realizing what resilience is to be able to listen to people without being involved, if that makes sense. Resilience is about understanding what's going on. It's being able to support what's happening with a clear mind and understanding of what's really bothering you. Because if you only focus on what's happening at the moment, you're not getting to the root of the problem. You're only attacking, or you're only listening to what you want to hear. But in this case, there's so much that I will use. I have to say, I'm not going to say name. I'm not going to give details because it's not fair, because she didn't give me permission, nor did I ask or think about it. But I can tell you that resilience requires patience, and it requires for people to put themselves in the other person's shoes.
Yeah, what you touch on, and I'm very sorry that this is happening to your neighbor, and I hope that, is it a lady?
Yes.
Or is it's a lady, that she knows, you know, how in a way fortunate she is that she had a sounding board. You mentioned earlier you didn't know what to say. Well, sometimes there is nothing to say. There is nothing to say, and just being there and being there present is all that's required very often.
Yes.
And I think that you touched on this kind of emotional distance. It's not like I'm distant from the person, but I don't let my emotional state be too contaminated, by this, because it doesn't necessarily help if somebody is completely losing it and dissolving in cries that you do the same thing. It's not helpful. And, but providing a shoulder to cry on, that is helpful, right?
Exactly.
So yeah. These are some of the coping mechanisms that are part of the resilience skill universe, because here there's two layers. There's how can this neighbor deal with what's happening, but also how can you protect yourself and deal with what you are exposed to, because these are things that are very energy absorbing. They snack your energy. The French have this beautiful word, energivore. And you can imagine like this little Pac-Man kind of thing, just going around and zapping and eating your energy to just, it just disappears. And after a talk like that or a session like that, you're absolutely exhausted as a coach or as a sanitologist, like you are. And so how do we protect ourselves and emerge on the other side on a somewhat even keel is part of what resilience is. This once you go through this difficult phase, like crossing a valley, how do you emerge, and how do you emerge on the other side, and how do you bounce back even brighter and stronger than you were going in? And so those are kind of the things that we wanted to touch on. Is there something related to this that you would like to talk about or get off your chest? What can we do to support you in this situation?
Honestly, for me, it's about what I usually do. And just because I technically just stepped into the house and just sat down, what I usually do is just sit down and stay in silence, because you have to absorb the information and you have to be free of any kind of trying to solve the situation mindset. That's not what I was there for. And watching her try to even go through her own resilience of how am I going to accept this is part of what I would need to help her with, because a lot of people, when they hear it the first time, it doesn't sink in. And it's part of the thanatologist to help the person go through the emotions of, the denial, the bargaining. There is no bargaining, unfortunately, but it's not my place to tell her, well, honey, you have no bargaining to do, right?
So,
for me, it's just thinking about it for some time.
I just want to pull out some words, maybe to raise everybody's and our awareness about it. Silence, patience, process. You are going to go through a process, whether you want it or not. It can be long, it can be short, but the process is there. The whole Kübler-Ross and all these kind of it's going to happen. If a disruption or a disturbance happens in your status quo, whether it be for the negative or sometimes even the positive, believe it or not, you are going to go through a change process.
Correct.
And that involves this process that is traditionally associated with grief, but that happens in nearly every change, in my experience, right? Because even if something really positive were to happen to you, as something you choose, something you're excited about, like you're getting married, for instance, you are going to go through the same process. And that's actually, I think, also where the cold feet syndrome comes from, and the jitteriness, because you have to say, in that case, goodbye to your single life. You have to say goodbye to the status quo as it was and move into something new. So process is part of this thing. Emotional regulation. Again, we touched on it earlier. It's not having this emotional overwhelm, because we are very emotional beings as people. And sometimes our emotions can absolutely take over our cognitive functions. Because if you have a hot and heavy emotion and you have a hot and heavy thought, emotion wins every time. Yeah. So emotional regulation and this awareness is really important. And even though you said I have to sit and think about it, sometimes you actually even have to sit and not think about it, and just let it detach from it a little bit. And just do it, because at the core of many of these things is acceptance. And it is what it is. It is what it is. And sometimes we can change outcomes and sometimes we can't. And so we see just in this example that there's so many things that factor and play a role in these aspects of resilience, or just in essence going through a tough time. Even though resilience is coping with the hard stuff, but then also a set of skills to bounce back at the other end.
Correct.
So there's different skills, different mindset aspects that play out in different moments of this process. Is that your experience?
Yes. For me, you're absolutely right. One of my objectives is always to say, okay, I need to absorb the information that I just received and think about what is my role in this. Because sometimes part of resilience is that we cannot achieve resilience because we insert ourselves freely into problems. And you have to learn to, and really you do have to learn to detach yourself, be able to say, I'm going to try to do as much as I can with what I have.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I do always suggest to people to use is be careful you use, which is not tell the person what to do, but ask the person what they're doing and listen. And that way, instead of you thinking and speaking for them, because incredibly, when you start speaking for the other person, that's when you become too attached to the situation versus listening to what they're telling you and be able to absorb the information, think of what tools you naturally have or have developed in order for you to be able to help the person go through the next step. Because we're talking about paperwork, we're talking about house, we're talking about husband, we're talking about family, we're talking about all of these things that can use.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, for me, having to is one of the most important things, because otherwise I would just be spending my day at that person's house trying to see how I can help, and you cannot help.
You cannot help. You cannot help. And so does this fundamental deployment of being able to sit in, and I translate a beautiful German word, which is called Lösungslosigkeit, which
Okay.
means solutionlessness, being okay with
Mhm.
solutionlessness. And you know, some of us are more solution driven than others. Okay. Men are very often much more solution, and I don't want to stereotype, but very often
No.
the case are very much
Yeah.
more solution oriented, like I need to solve this.
Yes.
There's maybe some women that can just endlessly talk about it. You know, but matter of point, I am a very solution-driven person, and as a novice coach, I had to learn
Yeah.
not to jump to the solution, because you know it would only be my solution. It is not necessarily appropriate for my client. And when I think
Correct.
about my solution in my head, I'm not listening to the client. So
Correct.
you know, being okay with the solutionlessness. But earlier you also you know, touched again on this thing of emotion and getting overly invested in the issue. I think that it is a challenge because so many of us in the helping professions
Mhm.
went into this field because we have a quite developed sense of empathy
Mm.
and
Yes.
of literally wanting to help, wanting to support, and then to kind of keep tight reins on this very natural part of our being,
Mhm.
because it wouldn't be as beneficial to the client and the situation at hand, is you know, is something that we have to practice. It you know, you don't do it just like the switch of a button. You
Yep.
know, that at some point you say, oh, from now on I'm not going to do that anymore. It is a learning, and something you have to practice.
Correct.
So yeah,
So
again, many aspects of it.
yes.
The only thing too that maybe just to develop a little bit one more idea, I think that resilience skills for me fall into two main categories. The ones are mindset based.
Okay.
It's like organizing and getting a handle on what's going on with you, mindset, and that also like emotional intelligence. You know, how do you deal with your own emotional regulation, like, but it's you, it's the inner game of resilience.
Yes.
And then the other part is the much more tactical actions you have to take, planning you have to do, and so on. And what's difficult in the contexts that require resilience is that those things that maybe you would be able to do very easily, like, you know, write a letter, look up a document, fill out
Mhm.
a form, you know, deal with the house or the family or whatever, they would be very easy. In these kind of situations where resilience is really called for, these crisis moments, those things become incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's challenging to go through things like that, but
It's challenging, but I have to say that I have developed a couple of things, you know, when you receive this kind of news and you know that there's something that people are hoping for you to help them with, which for me is to be grateful, number one, that to be grateful, period. Whatever you are grateful for, it's more than enough, because I can go cheesy and say, well, I'm grateful because I have my family, I'm grateful because I have my health, and blah. It's just about me sitting down and looking at my family and saying thank you.
mm,
Part of my resilience process. And then taking care of my family the way that I know, way that it makes me feel good and the way that they need me to do it.
mhm.
Um, and that makes me feel good because I know that resilience usually is required because you're constantly thinking about the things that you've lost or that you're about to lose, the things that you haven't done, the things that you believe you're missing out, MOFO, what they call MOFO. And you usually fall into that need of feeling resilience because you're wondering always, what am I missing out?
Yeah, regret.
And what
Its various
exactly
forms. Yeah,
exactly.
And regret for stuff that might be on a very distant time horizon, or regret about it today, or regret about things that won't be happening in the future, right?
Right.
And that hurts. That hurts. Stuff
Yes.
just not happening because you become intimately aware of your limitations in a case like that. Yeah.
And I think that comes with, when people tell you live, the people that are at the end of their life, one of the biggest things that I've always heard is, don't ever wonder what you could have, should have, would have. You're going to do it, do it. Live your life at the max and enjoy it, because that's really where regret comes from. When you realize that you could have done this and you should have done that, but you didn't do it. And this person, I have to say, she has lived her life, but she hasn't lived it the way that she would have wanted to live it. And that's a whole different story. See, when you think about it, is okay, you've lived a good life. So what is that you think you're missing out? And that is something that could fall into the plans of her end of life plans. It's hard to say, but it's the truth. And nobody wants to be there. But I do want to tell people that if there's anything that you can best do, is to write something like that. Is to say, if I were to write something about me that I would love for people to know about me, what would I like for people to say about me? And I don't know. I think one of the best things to do is to say, I lived my life the best way I could have lived it.
Yeah.
And I think also resilience comes with respect, which is what that's why a lot of people have so many regrets, because they're forgetting about that part in life. Even living your life requires for you to respect others.
And yourself.
And yourself, right? And so save yourself that part by learning to respect people, by not assuming that you're the only person. There's other people around you, but live your life. At the bottom, at the end of the day, live your life. I don't know what I'm thinking. I think I'm still thinking about our conversation. So I'm trying to do the best that I can today. But yeah, I do think that the best way to build resilience is to respect yourself in order for you to also not have that regret.
Yeah. Because if we don't start with the assumption that we are worthy and deserving of respect, then how can we expect people to even extend it to us either, right?
Yes.
I think that the exercise you mentioned before about, in this particular case, to write stuff down and about how do you want to be remembered, what and so on, like what do you want to share, is a beautiful way of turning back towards mindful gratitude, because and it moves the person slowly and gradually into this more strength-based, grateful kind of positive look on themselves, away from regret. And that can take different ways, right? It can take art, it can take writing, it can take just talking, it can be expressed in very, very many different ways. It might just be completely silent and internal, but I think it's a journey to reflect, especially as you're stuck in this really painful place, and look back and say, oh, it's not all bad. Or look at today and say, well, it might be what it is, but I did wake up breathing this morning. So, it's not hopeless quite yet, because, I'm still a living, breathing being. So I think that, like in so many instances, gratefulness and strength focus is such a strong antidote against all these negative and negative bias fueled over dramatizations and things like that happen in our brain. Yeah. So, and it can be just a steady undercurrent of, just mindfulness and gratitude. It just works so well. And it works fast too. We in coaching sessions, we do have clients, and I have had more than one that just dissolve into tears, because guess what? You might actually touch on an area of your life that you are inherently uncomfortable with, that is painful, that might be, maybe akin to a traumatic kind of part of your thing, and it comes up grief that hasn't been processed, the loss of a loved one or a job, regret about things that haven't happened, or distress about stuff that has happened. So it always happens. Very often it happens, right? It depends also the kind of coaching that you do, but even if you do coach a high-level executive about business matters, guess what? They can also in those sessions cry about their mother having passed away. Yeah. So the coaching is not like business and personal and all these kind of things. It's like life, people. It's human transformation, it's human coping, it's development, it's this intricate mesh of all these things that are interconnected. And if you think about business presence as an executive, for instance, guess what? It's like, how do you show up for life? Not only how do you show up for that interview or pitch or meeting. It's like, how do you show up, period? And that touches on very many different things. So when clients then, really do get emotional and get very, very negative, it's this negativity spiral that people can kind of get stuck in. And there's this LP track playing and always skipping back and always skipping back. We date ourselves, but we still know what LPs are. And so it's this ratata self story that we keep on telling ourselves, and we are stuck there. And an exercise in gratitude, an exercise in strength, and we have overcome similar situation in our life because we are here, right? And life is nothing if not repetitive. And so it is something that can work really fast. Sometimes there's some NLP techniques that can help and things like that. But to switch, it's like literally switching brain waves from a problem-based negative self-talk to a much more solution-based, open, hopeful self-talk. And, gratitude, as simple as it is, everybody can do it. It's free. It's always available. Can really accomplish so much. So much.
Yes, correct. Now, I wonder for people, for example, if they were to say, well, what would it be? Or I'd start very simple. very, very simple. I did not believe in the being grateful even for the food you have in your table. And that's very silly. I mean, I am grateful when it's Thanksgiving, you know, and I'm grateful because I have family and everything else, but sometimes it feels like it's not true. If you know what I mean, like you're like, oh yeah, I know you're gonna be here, blah blah blah. But being here in Saudi Arabia, being here in this country where we didn't have before people selling Christmas trees, which is even part of resilience, because being able to celebrate what you believe in, what you think, what you enjoy requires for you to understand that you're living in a country where that's a no-no, okay, to celebrate other religions, and accept that you will not find a Christmas tree, that you will not see spheres hanging from trees or lights or Santa Claus, But what I practiced was to say, okay, I probably cannot do all those kind of things in the outside. I might not be able to see that in the outside. But here at home, I can do it with my husband and I can do it with my little family. Yes. So I think that people, if they were to start with, I can tell you what I started with, which was to say thank you for the job that you've given my husband. Thank you, Company X, for the job that you've given my husband. And thank you for the food that I have on the table, because I was able to cook it, because that comes with it, right? That I was able to cook it. I was able to wake up today and take care of my family. I was, it brings a lot at the end of the day. And that could be a start, but you can also just say, oh, thank goodness I woke up. It might not feel like you have something to wake up for, but as you start showing gratitude for the things that happen good to you, the bad ones are not going to be so hard on you. It really is, because you have something to look forward to. Yeah. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and definitely, it goes actually. I mean, gratitude can be a very situational thing. You just feel down, and then you switch on this remedy that's like the secret ancient remedy to feeling better, and that works absolutely. But then it's you can go further, and practicing this attitude of gratitude that kind of stays with you throughout your days, right? And actually, so often I do wake up in the morning, and the first thought that I have is, I'm so grateful I woke up breathing this morning. And that might also be because, I have struggled with chronic health issues for a large portion of my life. And so it's not always a given that you're going to be there, people. Yeah. So be grateful for that. But little joys doesn't always need to be the big, overwhelming things. But, I'm using a fountain pen that writes really well. Yeah. Wow. I sit in front of my computer that after so many years I figured out how to set up just so. And my sweater is really plushy, and my cat came to me earlier and said hello. Stuff like that. It doesn't need to be like that, but when it happens in your life, to be mindful that something good is happening. Because so often we take the good stuff for granted and we obsess about the negative. But just being able to be happy about nice things. Yeah. For instance, a little bit of camera here is, I have this humongous bookshelf. Yeah, it's like 3.5 meters by 4 meters. It's a big old honking thing. When we remodeled the apartment, when we moved to Luxembourg again, what is it now, 11 years ago, It was kind of a thing to get this done. And it was custom made by a furniture maker out of oak, and it was very expensive. But every single day, I enjoy walking in the office and seeing my bookcase. Every single day. There's not once that I walk past it that I don't enjoy it. Yeah. Every time I go for a drive in my car, I'm very happy that I have such a nice car to drive. Yeah. And I don't obsess about, there were so many times in my life where I didn't have a nice car, or will I be able to afford another Audi in the future? Yeah, I'm not thinking about that. I'm like, look at this. I'm cruising down the Autobahn and I'm enjoying it. Yeah. And so I think that we can make this joy part of our everyday life. Stuff is still going to happen, people. It's kind of the definition of life, right? I mean, stuff happens and stuff hits the fan. Yeah, it's just part of it. But you can, by cultivating this attitude of gratitude, which, as you can tell, I'm a big proponent of.
Yes,
you can be always so aware of the silver lining, without needing to. It becomes this natural thing of also looking at the positive.
yes.
Also looking at the positive. And because you cultivated it in your everyday life, when then really the difficult moments come, it has become kind of like a habit. And you're able to, in the midst of everything, still see the little positive things, still enjoy the positive aspects of your life. Because even if things are bad, they very rarely are 100% bad. They might be 98% bad. Yeah, but find those 2% and still be grateful for those.
Thank you for saying that. That was something that I started thinking as you were talking. Sorry, because that's another thing. So we talked about, being grateful for what you have, but then people are wondering, well, and I don't say about the people that are watching us, but in general, people always wonder, well, how can I be happy when I've lost so much, And so my response is always, well, so what do you have right now? And what you have right now is usually what we less focus on, like you were saying before, right? We usually focus on the bad stuff. We usually focus on what we don't have, what we would like to have. And that's why we are not capable of being grateful for what we do have. And I'm not saying to be conformist. I'm not saying that. That has to be very clear, because you still need to continue in your journey towards what you want. What you do want is that for every single thing, for every single step that you take, you're not going to change what you currently have. So you might as well be grateful for what you are receiving, right? And then say, okay, today I have, let's say, a fishing boat, but a little one, right? A little one that I take to the lake. I just push it and I get in it and I just fish. But my dream is to have a big boat, a yacht. Okay, well, consider this. Life happens, and there's a lot of things that are going to happen in the process. You could have that yacht, but then you could also not have it. So what are you going to do? Okay, well, you know what? It was a nice dream. It was a nice thing. But you probably gave it up, your dream, because maybe now you have a family. Now you have a baby. Maybe you have other things that you did want or did not know that you wanted, but now you have them. So it's a matter of compromise. That's what I'm trying to get to. Sometimes gratitude also has to come with compromise, right? And compromise is about saying, okay, so I might not have this, but I could achieve this other thing. And people forget about that. And it's not about having everything. You will not have everything in life, but you can be grateful for what you currently have.
Yeah.
And then compromise towards what you could have, right? What's achievable. We've talked about that a lot. What's achievable, the goals, right? They have to be achievable.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because one thing that might be really important to point out is that gratitude is something in the now.
Mm-hmm.
In the now. And so if you become more apt at living in the now with mindfulness, with just awareness that you're living in the now, and that this precise moment is the sequence of these precise now moments is what's going to weave the fabric of your life. That you do not ignore all these chunks of time and experiences because you're so future focused on some future outcome that may or may not come, or obsessing about something in the past that you can no longer change. It's literally staying in the here and now and doing your darndest best to make the best of it. Because it truly so much of it is mindset. I mean, I coach all aspects of human transformation, but dealing with the internal game of our belief systems, our values, our thought processes, our patterns, our biases, and stuff like that. Truly, being a mindset coach is something that I very much enjoy, and there's this, and this plays into resilience as well, is expectation management.
Mm-hmm.
Expectation management. Because if sometimes we can adjust our expectation, the whole problem can go away.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there's maybe a little bit of an artificial distinction to be made here. If you think of reality as just being, it's just reality. It's not in itself good or bad. It's just what is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's our expectation of how reality should be, and the gap between what it is and what we think it should be, that creates the problem. That gap creates the pain. Yeah. So essentially, it's the view and the judgment that we bring onto the reality that just is, that creates our experience of it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah? So, but those things, those expectations, are things that are very often in our control.
Exactly. Correct.
Right? So we can manage expectations, and we can also take a step back and just saying, okay, it doesn't fit my expectations, but I can envision a situation where it might fit somebody's expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A very, very simple example, just to illustrate it maybe, is it rains.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The reality is there's water drops falling from the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is in itself neither good nor bad. Yeah. But the gardener who had a drought, how is he going to look at these water droplets falling from the sky for free? Doing all the work of watering the garden. He's going to be ecstatic. He's going to grin from eye to eye. So his expectation or his desire of having water to water the garden and cultivating his plants makes this reality a positive one. Yeah, his judgment of water falling from the sky is it's something good. His judgment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Same rain, other side of the street. You have a young mother going for a walk with the dog and a little kid. Yeah. And her expectation was, I wanted to go for a walk in nice sunny weather.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Water droplets falling from the sky, not so good. The kid
Mm-hmm.
is going to be wet and cranky, maybe. The dog is going to run around and
With their
play
dirty
around
paws.
in the mud, right? And then I have to give the dog a bath when I get home. So their expectation has not been met of this nice, pleasant, dusty but dry walk down the street, has not been realized, and they have a really hard time with it. Their expectation, their judgment makes a different experience of this same rain.
Correct.
Now, what could, the gardener can probably assume that, yeah, I'm very happy that it rains, but I'm sure that there's some people that are going to be bothered by it. Yeah. So that's the understanding. But also the young mother could maybe reframe her expectation and the way that she sees the thing by saying, well, we're going to get wet anyway, might as well jump into puddles, might as well get muddy as well, and let the dog run wild. That's going to tire him out, and I don't need to walk him as long tonight, or whatever. Just
Correct.
go with the flow, because there's not much you can do about water falling from the sky. So expectation management and reframing the way that we see this reality, and fundamentally just understanding that reality is, and it is our internal model, our desires, our views of it that make it good or bad. We carry around our own judgment of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so just realizing that, and makes for a very, very different experience. Just understanding that. Understanding that if I change maybe an idea or two, I can make my day a successful one versus a negative one.
Correct.
Yeah. So some situation, is easier said than done to reframe it, right? It's not all equal, but we're talking here, not everything is life or death. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this pertains to so much of it, so much. And rather than being upset about your boss scheduling a long meeting, you're grateful that you have a job, and you go in and do your best and chill out a little bit.
Correct. What you're saying is so freaking true, because a lot of people are probably wondering, when we talk about these kind of things, for us that we work from home, that we have our own business, probably someone would probably out there say, well, yeah, it's easy for you to say that because you don't have to deal with a boss, or you don't have to deal with coworkers. I have to say that one of the biggest certainties is that problems exist because of differences, and these differences are usually never talked about because we start assuming things about the other person and we never really ask. If we were to be taught that you don't need to scream, you don't need to confront, you don't need to act in any other way other than to say, hey, I'd like to talk to you. What did I do, or what's going on? I would like us to work better. It would solve 90% of the issues at the office, most probably, right? And the other 10%, well, it's because of other situations that you really don't have control over. But sometimes you rubbed the person the wrong way, or the person was having a bad day, and that impression will always stay with them because they were having a bad day, and you probably did not consider their feelings, but you weren't thinking about it, and you weren't wanting to hurt the person, and so on. It's so many things. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I would say, for the people that are wondering, out there, that are wondering, well, how can I do it when I'm stuck in a very toxic environment? Sometimes toxic environments, you can't do anything about that. You really just need to walk away from it. There's nothing you can do. You cannot fix a toxic environment, right?
You can, to a certain degree, you can fix your reaction to it. Right? You can become more gracious in your own way of thinking about it. Gracious to yourself, yeah, like protective and just not being contaminated by this toxicity, and and just like be a little bit more chill about things. And just because you mentioned it right now, I just want to open a parenthesis. We just talked about that we all carry our judgment of a reality that just is. So imagine you're in a meeting and a reality unfolds. Just remembering that amongst those 8 or 12 or 20 people in that meeting, everybody looks at the same reality differently.
Yes. Yep.
Is already going to be something very, very powerful. The worst thing is that we assume that everybody else is supposed to have the same view of this reality than you do. Yeah, as Shabbatos always says, common sense, the way that we interpret something, is not all too common. Yeah, and just coming to grips with and accepting that everybody is kind of seeing the same thing, the same issue, the same possibilities differently, and that in order for us to coexist and work together and collaborate together, it behooves us to be curious about how these different people perceive the reality at hand. And that opens some very interesting discussions. And sometimes there's literally culture becomes part of it, but very often it doesn't even need to. It's just different experiences, different expectations that everybody brings to the table that just make it this complex kind of thing. And very often that leads to misunderstandings and conflict and things like that, more than the actual reality. It's that we all see it differently, we all feel differently about it.
Correct. Here's one of the things. A couple of days ago, a person was having some conflict about who they were to the world. They feel lonely, they're at home, nobody wants to be their friend, and this and that. And I told her, for me, you are a funny person, but it doesn't mean that you don't have other things that might conflict with my beliefs, that your personality is not easy. I navigate your moods, I navigate through your personality because I'm interested in getting to know you more every single day. And I don't see anything wrong with your friendship. But I told her, and it's very hard for this person to understand this, other people have other views of you. I already kind of know you, and I already know what to expect of you. Other people don't. They see you and you immediately come in a different way. You rub them wrong because, number one, like you were saying, Claudia, it has to do a lot with culture. It has to do with beliefs. It has to do with habits. It has to do with even even who you are as a human being neurologically, meaning, are you a introvert? Are you an extrovert? You know, those kind of things have so much to do, right? You cannot expect from everybody to respond in the same way as I do. And so that for me, it's like people, when it comes about resilience, that has to be kept in mind to say, okay, well, maybe I'm not the best person, maybe I'm not the funnest person, maybe I'm not this and that. So I will just accept things for what they are. And here's the thing, sometimes people don't change not because they don't want to, but because they're not told. And I try to help this person by saying, look, this is who I am, but it doesn't mean that I agree with everything you say. So keep that in mind. And so part of that is resilience, right? To say, okay, I accept what you're saying. Thank you so much. I had not thought about that. Instead of that somebody's attacking you, instead of feeling that people are just wrong or people are being mean to you, because that's
judgy.
Exactly. So, you know, cultural and all this kind of stuff has so much to do with our resilience, because we don't understand. We believe that we're good people, so therefore we should have a lot of friends, but we don't see how the other person sees us. Like you were saying, Claudia, your reality is not my reality. The reality of my husband, it is not the reality of your husband, and so on and so on and so on. Everybody's going to see it in a different way. And we have filters. Even that reality that we see even goes through another filter.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, this internal model is based on the constructivist, ideas and concepts that reconstruct our own reality. Right? We have in us this internal model, and anything that we perceive, which is the reality like it is. Yeah, we perceive with our senses, we perceive reality as it is. But before we even become conscious of it, stuff gets filtered out, omission, stuff gets generalized, and stuff gets distorted as well. It gets distorted. Yeah. So and then it gets judged in terms of whether or not it is acceptable or not, again, based on our internal biases, based on our internal expectations and assumptions. And so, because, our brain tries very hard to keep our perception of the world, and perception is not our sense of the world, consistent.
Yes, because we're protecting ourselves, correct.
We're protecting ourselves. And therefore, we say that very often our beliefs are self-fulfilling prophecies, because we're only going to see the things that support our truth, our internal truth, which doesn't mean you can't go scraping at it. A lot of coaching is that, actually, to question some beliefs and to see, are they really true? And are they in our best interests? Are there no alternatives? And so on. So just like, we see through today's discussion, I think, if I can maybe start to sum it up, how complex this topic of resilience is. And we didn't even talk about failure and dealing with failure and learning and growth mindset and all those million other things that go into it. And it is such an important part that you and I have thought we would actually make it kind of a series. We would touch on resilience topics again, maybe once a month, as we move forward, and maybe talk more in depth about one aspect of it or another. Correct?
Correct.
So
yes, I think I would like, for me, from my side, is to finish by saying, are you ready? Like when you are in a situation, are you ready to absorb the reality is? Because if you're not ready and you start omitting, like Claudia was saying, omitting realities or things that happen to protect yourself, I get it, but you still have to be able to go back to it and say, I'm going to be honest with myself. This is what I saw. This is what it is. And that's part of how you start getting resilience, admitting to yourself that what you saw is probably not going to be in your convenience, but it's reality.
Yeah.
It's what everybody else saw.
Yeah, it is. It puts a whole different spin on let's be real. Let's be real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I think that's a good place to wrap up. I hope that I'm really happy that despite your experience today, you showed up and shared this thing with us. And that's what live streaming is to people. We react to topics of the moment, and so we hope that it was valuable for everybody listening in now or in the future. And if you like this content, find some value in it, please show us some love. Subscribe to our page on LinkedIn, our channel on YouTube. Give us some love with likes and comments and all that. And if you want to interact with us, contact us anytime, also with possible topics.
Yes.
If you want to be interviewed, whatever, just give us a shout. We'll see what we can work out.
Yes, thank you everybody for watching. Claudia, it was such a pleasure to talk with you, and thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
Thank you for letting me share this moment with you.
My
and
pleasure.
Thank you everybody, and good night from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Stay resilient and be real. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.